On the 12th of September 1944, Major Robert Cowboy Stewart piloted his F-6F Hellcat circling Palau Island at an altitude of 8,000 feet. An automatic camera mounted under the wings steadily captured panoramic shots of the airfield. The mission was simple: fly over, photograph the northern airfield, then return to the USS Hornet. Intelligence insisted the airfield had long been abandoned, likely rendered unusable by earlier bombing runs. But when Stewart looked down, reality hit him like a cold slap. The airfield was not abandoned, it was packed with Japanese aircraft. Mitsubishi G4M bombers were lined up in precise rows, fighter wings pressed high like walls. Ground crews bustled around each plane. This was preparation for a large-scale air raid, not an abandoned airport. A quick scan revealed at least 40 planes fully fueled and armed. Their target was clear. In 3 days, 80,000 U.S. Marines would land on Palau Island, launching one of the largest amphibious operations of the Pacific War. The invasion fleet was already en route, and these Japanese aircraft would shred the fleet before the Marines even hit the beaches. By the book. He should have radioed the coordinates immediately, returned to the carrier, and let command plan the next steps. A reconnaissance plane job is to observe, not attack, and certainly not to dive solo into a fully armed airfield. But Stewart knew how the military worked. By the time he returned, the intelligence was processed and strike waves were organized. Hours, or even a full day would have passed. By then the Japanese planes could have relocated, hidden in shelters or taken off to bomb the fleet. The Marines, about to hit the beaches, had no time to wait for bureaucratic delays. They needed those planes gone immediately. Right now Stewart climbed higher to reassess the airfield layout. The Japanese had made a critical mistake. The aircraft were parked too close together, surrounded by exposed fuel trunkles like a single spark, and the entire airfield would erupt in flames. He checked his weapons: 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, 2,400 rounds, total enough for a maximum of 12 seconds of continuous fire. Not enough to destroy 40 planes individually, but enough to ignite a chain reaction. By the way, before continuing the story, where are you from? How much do you know about the Palau campaign? Have you heard of Cowboy Stewart raid? Let us know in the comments below. Stewart was no reckless rookie. At 28, he had completed 63 combat missions, surveyed 0 fighter attacks, attacked fortified positions under heavy fire, and even landed on a carrier in severe storms. He knew the line between bravery and suicide, and now he was standing right on it. If he attacked, every anti-aircraft gun on the field would be targeting him, alone, with no wingman to suppress fire and no one to cover his retreat. The Hellcat was tough, but a single hit to the engine or cockpit would send him crashing into the jungle with no chance of survival. If he didn't attack, those 40 planes would take off, bomb the landing craft, sweep the transports, turn the beaches into a slaughterhouse. Stewart had witnessed such carnage at Tara on the first wave. Japanese aircraft shredded the landing craft, and he had been powerless to save them after less than 30 seconds of thought. He made his decision: throttle full. The Hellcat dove toward the treetops, altimeter bouncing wildly, wind screaming in his ears. The plan was simple: low-level high-speed penetration, hit the fuel drums first, and punch out before the anti-aircraft guns could react. At 2,000 feet, he leveled the aircraft full throttle, speed approaching 400 miles per hour. The engine roared as the Hellcat skimmed the treetops, shadows of trees flashing beneath the fuselage. The airfield came into view. Ground crews looked up, froze, then scattered in panic. No one made it to the anti-aircraft positions in time. Stewart targeted the northern row of planes and squeezed the triggers. All 6 machine guns roared tracer rounds, slicing across the tarmac, tearing through the thin aluminum of the Zero fighters, and igniting sprayed fuel. He adjusted slightly, aiming at the cluster of fuel drums stacked between 2 bombers. Bullets shredded the barrels like a can opener. The next second, his massive fireball erupted, engulfing 2 planes. The explosion exceeded expectations. Flames shooting 50 feet high, the shockwave rattling the Hellcat. The fire spread one burning Zero, ignited the next, a chain reaction, and within seconds half the northern plains were ablaze. Ground crews were in total chaos, fleeing for their lives. Anti-aircraft gunners finally opened fire, but Stewart was already climbing away, weaving through the flares. His plane was hit. A 20mm shell pierced the tail, warning lights flashed, but the engine still roared as he banked sharply and climbed back to altitude. More and above, the damage was far beyond expectation. Nearly 20 aircraft burned, flames spreading along the tarmac, thick smoke rising visible for miles. At the southern end of the airfield, more than 20 intact enemy planes still sat along the runway. Stewart checked his machine guns. Less than half the ammunition remained, meaning he had at most 6 seconds of firing left by now. The anti-aircraft positions were fully engaged. Any target passing overhead would be immediately locked onto diving again. At this point was almost a death sentence, yet he pulled back on the stick, rolled the plane over, pitched forward, and plummeted toward the ground. A hail of anti-aircraft fire rained down tracer rounds, weaving around the fuselage like a swarm of enraged hornets. Stewart made rapid zigzag maneuvers, never giving gunners a clear shot. The Hellcat shuddered under the impacts, metal tearing under intense heat and shock. He shifted his angle of attack, locking onto the bombers at the southern end of the airfield. In a matter of seconds, the remaining ammunition poured out, ripping apart control surfaces, penetrating fuel tanks. His fire hit a fuel truck on the tarmac. The explosion sent a fireball rolling and flipped a nearby bomber. A second explosion followed immediately, spreading fire to a row of stacked ammunition boxes. A chain of subsequent explosions erupted, igniting the bombers' internal ordnance, blowing the planes apart from the inside out. In moments, the southern formation was also engulfed in flames, the destruction as intense as what had occurred at the northern end. Then, Stewart's guns fell silent. He yanked the stick to climb, but damaged control surfaces made the Hellcat sluggish and heavy. Wooing lights flashed, and smoke began curling from somewhere in the fuselage, threatening fire. Yet, the entire airfield had become a hellish inferno. Plans, fuel drums, warehouses, shelters, square were now consumed by raging flames. Thick black smoke rose skyward like a towering gravestone over the battlefield. Stewart piloted the battered Hellcat, struggling to reach the open sea. The plane hydraulics were nearly gone. Controls sluggish as if dragging leather. Oil pressure steadily dropping, even the landing gear deployment uncertain. The only blessing, the engine was still running. The flight back was far longer than the attack. When the adrenaline subsided, he fully grasped what he had done. He had disobeyed orders, taken no photographs, bypassed protocol, and single-handedly launched an assault on the entire airfield. A court-martial was a real possibility. Every officer from the lowliest lieutenant to a Navy admiral could have questioned him, but letting 40 enemy planes take off to slaughter the landing forces would have been an unforgivable catastrophe. In the distance, the USS Hornet appeared on the horizon. Stewart immediately radioed. Aircraft heavily damaged, landing gear status unknown, requesting priority landing. The carrier turned into the wind, clearing the deck. The landing gear deployed, but one side failed to lock completely. He risked a high-speed landing, catching the second arresting wire. The enormous impact slammed the damaged Hellcat almost flat onto the deck. Deck crew rushed over, stunned, tail section torn, fuselage riddled with bullet holes, paint scorched black from nearby explosions. Stewart climbed out of the cockpit, facing a barrage of questions. Why return in a heavily damaged aircraft? Why break radio silence? What happened on Palau? His answer was simple. The airfield wasn't abandoned. It was packed with a full squadron preparing to attack the landing fleet. I destroyed them all. 40 enemy aircraft, from discovery to destruction, in less than 8 minutes. No one could believe it at the time, until reconnaissance photos confirmed it. Northern airfield on Palau had been reduced to scorched earth. 40 Japanese planes burned to blackened wrecks. Field depots cratered. Intelligence had to revise its assessment of Japanese air power. The next day, the Marines landed on Palau beaches under complete air superiority. The air raid that could have annihilated them had been erased by a single pilot willing to defy orders. Stewart was awarded the Navy Cross, United States Navy second highest honor, for combat valor. The citation praised his courage and decisiveness in single-handedly engaging a superior enemy, directly saving countless lives. The Palau campaign remained brutal on landing day. Marines faced some of the fiercest combat of the Pacific War. Gauler terrain, ridges and caves formed natural fortresses, and battle lasted 2 months. Nearly 2,000 American troops fell, but if Stuart had destroyed those 40 planes the day before, casualties would have been far, far higher. At the time, Marines were packed into landing craft and transport ships, unable to move or hide themselves. Air attacks during amphibious assaults were devastating. Military historians later estimated that on that first day alone, Stuart's solo action may have saved between 500 and 1,000 Marines. His combat lasted just 8 minutes, yet he achieved what an entire bombard before the Japanese could evacuate their aircraft. After the war, Stuart returned to California and led a quiet life, rarely speaking about his experiences on Palau. His children grew up knowing only that their father had served in the Pacific, and it wasn't until decades later that they learned the full story. The Navy Cross stayed tucked in a drawer, never hung on the wall. Friends said he disliked attention or praise. Whenever asked about the raid, he would shrug it off. "I saw planes that needed to be destroyed, so I destroyed them." Any pilot would have done the same. But the truth was, not every pilot could do what he did. Most would strictly follow orders, report the situation over the radio, and let command handle the response. Such bureaucratic processes would have given the enemy enough time to evacuate or launch their planes. Stuart chose to trust his own judgment and dared to defy orders. That was the key. Outside of military aviation circles, his story remained virtually unknown for decades, until historians revisited the mission reports, cross-referenced Japanese records and aerial photographs. One pilot, flying a single fighter, destroyed 40 enemy planes in 8 minutes, potentially saving over 1,000 lives. This attack continues to be studied by military strategists, illustrating the immense value of initiative at the tactical level. Stuart could never be 100% certain his decision was correct. He was betting on his own threat assessment and putting his life on the line to execute the attack. Every protocol pointed to caution: follow orders, report the situation, let superiors decide. But he understood that sometimes the person witnessing the scene firsthand can judge more accurately than a commander looking at a map from afar. He chose to trust his assessment, even if it meant directly defying orders. This perfectly illustrates the principle of command intent. The Navy did not order him to attack the airfield, but they sent him to protect the landing forces. He understood the intent behind the mission and adjusted his actions according to the situation, awarding him the Navy Cross, rather than convening a court-martial. Officially recognized this. Strict adherence to orders could have led to disaster, while following the intent saved lives. Modern fighter pilot studies Stuart's case in tactical training courses, not just for his flying skill, but for his decision-making under extreme pressure. The military emphasizes that rigidly following orders can sometimes mean missing a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The attack also demonstrated perfect target prioritization. Stuart didn't waste ammunition destroying each plane individually. He targeted the fuel drums, the critical weak point. A single well-placed shot outweighed 1,000 shots in the wrong place. He executed low-level, high-speed passes from multiple angles, minimizing exposure to anti-aircraft fire and demonstrating tactical sophistication beyond simple marksmanship. He analyzed defenses, planned his route, and carried out the mission even with a damaged plane. At the crucial moment, he knew when to stop. When ammunition ran out, he did linger to assess damage or search for more targets. Withdrew immediately. Lingering would only have added unnecessary risk. Every decision was made in seconds under fire, and his training and experience ensured each was correct. Robot Cowboy Stuart passed away in 2005 at the age of 89. His family eventually shared his story, and military historians rushed to record the details before they were lost. Mission reports, reconnaissance photos, and the citation all confirm this almost cinematic fact. Stuart's attack on Palau was one of the most successful solo actions in naval aviation history. During World War II, no other pilot destroyed so many enemy aircraft in a single mission. His 8-minute engagement prevented a devastating air assault on the Palau invasion. The Marines landing on the beaches never knew that one pilot due defiance had saved their lives. They faced hellish combat on a coral island, against fortified Japanese positions, every inch of land a battlefield. But at least they weren't strafed by 40 enemy planes as they went ashore. Sometimes the bravest thing a soldier can do is refuse to blindly follow orders. This is not cowardice or rebellion. It's recognizing that circumstances demand immediate action, and that rigid procedures would prevent it. Stuart instinctively understood this. When faced with choosing between following orders and doing what needed to be done, he chose the mission over the command. His legacy lives on in every tactical training course, teaching that initiative trumps obedience, adaptability beats rigidity, and the judgment of those on the ground can be trusted. The military learned from Stuart and other pilots like him that the best course of action is sometimes the one no one has ordered you to take. Next time you face a situation where following a rule seems wrong, where rigid procedures conflict with an urgent necessity, think of Cowboy Stuart over the Palo airfield. He knew what had to be done, he knew the consequences of failure, yet he acted because the alternative was far worse. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video and help us share more forgotten stories of World War II. Subscribe to the channel to stay connected with untold history. Every story matters. Every story deserves to be remembered. We also want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us where you're from. From Texas to Tasmania, from veterans to history enthusiasts, you are a special part of our community.